So, being nearly a month into our just assessment and recovery and repair from Hurricane Helene here in Western North Carolina, there are so many things that I wish I would have known, that I wish I would have been able to do those first 24 hours after disaster hit. And so, if I could remind myself of this or share it with even one other person and say, guess what? The grid has gone down. Everything as you know it has come to a complete and abrupt halt. Go. Know this information. These are the things that you need to help you in those first 24 hours after a disaster has hit and the grid is gone. Hey there to all the new friends and faces we have around here. My name is Heidi, and I've been creating content here on our YouTube channel, Heavenly Minded Home, for almost 7 years now. And we usually focus on the things that are just life and children and family and just biblical womanhood and living a life for the Lord. And biblically, how does that look in everything? I love the topic of stewardship and simple living, slow living, sustainability, things of that nature. And I'm so excited to talk more about these things. But about a month ago, our home, our town, our community, the entire area up here was really just rocked by Hurricane Helene. I live just east of Asheville, and our whole area up here has been turned upside down. It's been a month now, and it just everywhere you go, my husband and I are out running errands today, and everywhere you go, things are just so drastically different. And so while we were, abruptly forced into this, survival off grid, living situation, we could have never expected the storm that hit us here with Helene. This is not how this ever looks for the mountains up here. And so while we thought we were prepared for what we normally should expect in a situation like this, it's not what happened. And so being forced off grid, literally our entire everything went down. The cell phones weren't working. 911 wasn't working in many places. No power, no internet, no water, no anything. The infrastructure of all of these places literally underwater, destroyed, heavily damaged. All of the things happened in one fell swoop, and not just for our area, but again, a large radius all around us. So, in this sort of like emergency disaster situation where the entire everything goes out and doesn't come back anytime soon, what do I wish we would have known, especially in those first 24 hours? It would have made a big difference. And so I'm going to share with you the things that really stand out to me. I've got a few of them here. I wrote them all down, so it might take us a second, but I really think they're going to be helpful. I will put chapters down below if you guys want to check those out. And I'm also going to share a video of the actual items that we have since gotten that would have made a huge difference. The things that we did have on hand that made a big difference, and different ways that you can help and get involved here with the recovery for all of us here in Western North Carolina, as your donations and supplies being sent and watching these videos and sharing these videos really has made a massive impact as we continue to try to restore our home. We have cleanup and tree removal, and so mold removal, and so much going on all around us, and continuing to pour into our community here and help others as well. So again, I'll leave links down below. Let's get into the things I wish I knew in that first 24 hours after the grid went down. Now be sure you watch till the end, because yes, we're going to be talking about the practical things, but I also want to talk about the heart, a little bit more to the root of the matter, and the things that really can make a huge impact in any situation for any of us that we might be going through, where we find ourselves unexpectedly off the grid or in some sort of disaster scenario that can be so difficult to work through. So stay tuned. We're going to get through them, but I always like to hit on the root of the matter as well. So obviously we have the basics like water. For us, our water is on a well. And so if power goes out, it means we have no water. Power went out and stayed out. And so water is such a big necessity. And I think these tips are helpful for anyone, regardless of where you are. None of us ever know when some sort of catastrophe is going to happen. Like I said, this whole hurricane here for North Carolina was so just outside of anything anyone here even could have prepared for. And so anytime that you might have been like us and thinking you're pretty prepared for these things, it takes these crazy circumstances to come together to show us maybe we're not as prepared as we thought we were. So for us, we have a well, we have water here, we have things we thought we would be more than fine. I think it's important to remember that with water, you want to have your drinking water and also your like cleaning, sanitary type water. That was one thing, especially for, the following week where we had absolutely no services whatsoever and everything was completely down. Being able to have those two different categories of water was really important. Of course, you can boil water. There's different things you can do. There's tablets you can put in them. I mean, all of those things are great, wonderful things. But I think in that first 24 hours after this, I wish I would have been a little more prepared, had a better setup, if you will, to have things like now we have those big jugs of water with a really awesome like USB rechargeable. You can plug it into your car and recharge it, dispenser to go on top. That made it so wonderful. We have 14 people here living on our property. So we have my husband and I and our 4 kids. My brother lives on the property, and then our friends, they just right before the hurricane moved onto the property in their own home, here with us. And so being able to have enough water, having like a gravity fed filter and things like that was really, really important. And if we would have had that in the first 24 hours, it would have made a huge difference. The next thing would be just water for cleaning and sanitation. You don't realize how much water toilets use until you are having to gather the water from a creek at the bottom of your property and hike it up to the house to pour into the tank every time 14 people want to flush the toilet. There's certain things that we had to do right away to cut down what we were using. But as the days continued to go on and this just was where we were stuck, you really started to see how much water you need and just daily sanitation and upkeep of things. And so for us, when the hurricane was going on and we were realizing, I think this is pretty bad, I don't think this is going to stop, we actually went around and grabbed as many containers as we could and set them out outside to let them catch water while it was raining, so that we could repurpose and reuse that. But being a little more intentional with our ability to have, drinking water and just cleaning water, a system to be able to access that is something that I wish we would have known and had been prepared for. That would have made a big difference, especially in the beginning when everything was falling apart. Now, the second thing that was really important, I think, of course, we have to talk about food. So something that was really important for us that we did do is when we started to realize, oh, wow, everything is down, nothing is coming back. This is, a much bigger deal than expected. It was, okay, what food do we have that we need to cook first? And so being able to look at what you have already existing in the home and to prioritize, okay, this needs to go first, this we can wait on, being able to prioritize that and work through it was really important. Because while yes, it would have been fantastic if we had some sort of generator or something that could have kept the fridge cold, that would have been fantastic. We didn't. It would have been nice, to have a deep freezer or something like that that would have been a little bit colder. We've since been able to get ones that we're able to store food and to pass out food and to do things like that. That's fantastic. But knowing what we had and being able to get through it, as a priority basis was really, really important. Having an outdoor camping / cooking stove was really, really important. I had a little propane one that we've had thrown in our closet for the past 10 years for just in case if there was a hurricane or something and our power went out for a little bit. That was a lifesaver. And one thing that's really important that we're working on now is having a grill, something outdoors, that you can make a fire of any sort in and be able to cook on that. Because having foods on hand that don't require a lot of energy to make, I might have had a handful of things, kind of tucked into my freezer and in my pantry, but the more we looked at how much resource and energy we'd have to use to be able to cook that, and especially for a large family like us with 14 people, it would have really depleted a lot of our resources to even try to get that made. And so having things that are a little bit quicker and easier to make on hand definitely makes a big impact once you've gone through and prioritized of the food you have, what has to be eaten first. Thank you all so much for being here, for helping and supporting and encouraging. And I pray that these videos can be a blessing for you as well. Now, if you want any way that you can get involved and you can help all of us here as we are going through this and quite genuinely sifting through the rubble and putting our lives back together. I have links down in the description of ways that you can get involved, ways that you can send donations, send items in need, be able to sign up and share things that you might be in need of if you're here locally, or different ways that you might be able to help. If you have any questions at all, please reach out and let us know. But otherwise, be sure to check out all the links down in the description. Keep watching these videos, sharing these videos, and continuing to spread the word and keep us covered in prayer as we work through this very long process. But Lord willing, each day we come a day closer. Thank you all. And be sure, check those all out. Leave us any comments with any questions you might have. Okay, so the third thing here, I can already hear my husband, everybody who knows me, basically rolling their eyes. I am one of those people that never has gas in my car. I just, when I fill it up, I fill it up to full, and then I fill up my car like once a month. Okay, like I'm not a person who, I'm always that person that will like see my gas light on and keep going, which I know. Gas went away like immediately. I know so many people are like, oh, you need a generator, you need a generator. There was no gas to put in a generator, right? There was nothing that you could have done even if you had one. For a lot of us up here, even still, we're having some touch and go with what is available and what trucks can get out to us and restock stores and bring supplies and things like that. And we're almost a month in now. Keeping at least half a tank of gas in your car at all times. In the wildest turn of events, when all of this happened, we're stuck on the property. The only vehicle that can get out is my brother's. We have trees down everywhere. Our driveway is like washed away, literally. It was so crazy because my car was actually the only car with gas because I had just filled it up, totally unrelated. I just happened to fill it up. And so it was having that vehicle full of gas that meant we could turn it on, we could charge things, we could run things. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have had the availability to do that. And so I think things like that are really important when you go, wow, like if I just got into the practice of always keeping at least half a tank of gas in my car, if something were to happen, at least I'd already have enough in the car that I could potentially get to somewhere that had what I needed. And so being able to do that and to rotate cans of fuel, we usually have some gas cans down, in the barn for, mowers and weed eaters, things of that nature. And so that was one of those things where we're like, man, we really need to make sure we stay on top of that, because if we would have had some gas on hand in that first 24-hour window, it would have been really, really beneficial, not only for our own uses, but also being able to help our neighbors as well. So gas is definitely a big one. Now, the next point is definitely very, very important. And unfortunately, for so many, around the area here, there wasn't even time for this with how fast homes were literally just sliding down the mountains. But having your important papers in one location. For me, I have a file cabinet drawer with a certain folder that I try to stack everything into. So if I were to have to run in and grab the things, I could. We've actually lived in a home before where we had to be evacuated by boat and taken out. And it's the craziest feeling if you've never been through it before, where you run back into your home and you go, what do I even grab? I don't even know, right? And it can be so overwhelming. And so having one spot, one place, whether it's a box, whatever it is that you say, all the things that I know we absolutely need, birth certificates, marriage certificates, social security cards, right? Whatever those really, really important papers are, to have them in some sort of safe, protected box or container of sorts that you could just grab and run if need be, is definitely something that thankfully we didn't have to evacuate our home, but we had a lot of water damage inside, and if these things would have been strewn about and would have been mixed up in this, it would have been obviously a really big deal. And so I'm thankful that ours was okay. But important papers in one easy to go to location, absolutely important. Now, I understand the fifth point here goes completely against everything that the world is telling us to do, but always have at least $200 cash on hand. I know I'm not a person who usually has cash on hand. Everything is switched to online. I usually don't have any extra that I could stash away. And it kind of just is what it is. Everything went down here. Everything is still continuing to go down. I'm telling you, the amount of things still going on here in this entire area, it's such a struggle because so much infrastructure was that destroyed by this storm. And so even once the initial part was over, you'll still go to stores and no cards, sometimes cards, all cash, right? You're constantly still having to do that. And in the first bit, when everybody was cash only, I had no cash on hand. Luckily for us, our friends had some cash, and my son had his birthday cash. I felt awful because I'm going, oh my word, why don't I have cash on hand? I never have cash. I never use cash. I never stash it to the side because I live pretty much paycheck to paycheck, right? We have a very small income. We're very frugal with our money. I don't just stash cash places. This has taught me the importance of I definitely need to find a way to get some cash to set off to the side. And I think having $200, which again, I feel like feels like a lot, but when we had to go and we had to try to find food and try to do things, we were eating foods much different than what we're usually grocery shopping and menu planning for. And so things cost a little bit more and you had different stuff to deal with. And so it was having that cash on hand, though, that really made all the difference when trying to sort out and get through this new norm of life when the grid has completely gone down. And so, cash on hand, absolutely recommended that you start stockpiling a little bit now just to have as a resource and a tool if the time should come. Now, let's go ahead and talk about light sources. Especially for us, we already live out in the country, it's rather dark, but when your entire town and every town surrounding it has zero power for an extended amount of time, it gets even darker than you thought it was. And again, I live out in the country. I feel like it gets pretty dark out here. We don't have a lot of light pollution, but that darkness hits and it hits quickly. And when it's dark, it's dark. So it was amazing to see the areas of our home that, you're just used to being able to see in. I feel like for our house, we use lamps and low lighting. I don't like a lot of artificial light as it is, but even with the low amount we use, going to zero was a big change. And so being able to have light sources available already in the home and then being able to have a system to keep them charged or refilled or replenished is really, really important. Again, I'll share a video at the end of some of the things that we're using that are really phenomenal that I can't wait to share with you guys, because I think for all of us, we would be wise. You never know if there's going to be a power outage. You never know if some crazy thing's going to happen and the whole grid is going to go down, and especially if it's going to end up staying down for an extended period. Having things like candles on hand, right? I used to do weddings, and so I had a bunch of tea lights left, but they're the really good tea lights that would burn for 6 hours. Being able to sprinkle those around the house, down the hallways, in the bathroom, I mean, it was so helpful to have something like that. Being able to have some solar lights. We've actually found a couple amazing ones. You guys are such a blessing. You're able to get them for us. They have been lifesavers out here. Being able to have solar lights was really important. We could charge them throughout the day to the best of our ability. We had a lot of cloud coverage, so it wasn't the greatest, but it was enough to get by. Having things on hand like, maybe oil lamps or something like that. Having light sources that you can easily maintain depending on your situation and what you have going on, very, very important. Seventh point that is so incredibly important, and again, I know in this day and age, so many of us, we've gotten so far from this, but let's lean on the wisdom of our ancestors and just go old-fashioned-ish with our lives. The more you think about having real paper books on hand, having cookbooks on hand, right? If the grid's down, you're having to figure out how to do the things, especially in those first, 24 hours after some sort of crazy disaster like this. You're trying to remember the things and put it all together and figure out all of your pieces. And so many times we would all do it. We would grab our phones to look up what this is or what about this or whatever. And you feel almost so silly because you're like, oh, that's right, everything's down. I can't access any of this stuff. I don't know. I don't remember how to do this or how to do that or what exactly that was or what that ratio things. Giving the kids something to do, or luckily for us, we had just gone to the library that week. And so they had a bunch of books and it was like, good, here's your books that you have to read, right? Here you go. Having books on hand, having actual real board games and card games and dice, things like that to still have something to do and to stay entertained with, I think is so important. Having some music on hand. For us, we just lucked out. My niece actually had some downloaded like music playlists on her phone, and it was all the real oldies and stuff that I like. And so being able to have that and put it on a rechargeable Bluetooth speaker where we could have a little bit of soft music playing in the house to kind of cut the silence, was something that was really, really helpful, especially in that beginning where, again, you have all this chaos and all of this uncertainty going on, and being able to weave in those little bits of a board game to play, some soft music that could be playing on in the background, a little bit of something to help that definitely made a big difference. And something that I have some of and we would like to add to our collection is some of those books of just health tips, DIY, like off grid sustainability, first aid type books of things that you could use and things that we normally would probably Google to try to figure out. Having a couple of those types of books in a actual paper book copy in your house, definitely something worthwhile thinking about things that, I wish we could have been a little more prepared with. Eighth thing I wish we were better prepared with would have been adapters and chargers in your car. You should always have a charger to your phone or phones in the car so you have a backup and you know where it is. We thankfully were able to get one before our stores locally totally sold out and then nobody could get anything. But having an adapter that you can plug into the car and power through that way and still be able to recharge things, to power, certain devices and stuff, really, really important. And I think having a like emergency charging, bag in the trunk of your car that you have those resources there, really, really important. We really did rely on the cars for that charging feature. Like I said, generators, we didn't have one, but we didn't have the fuel to keep one going. Solar generator, I would love to have one. That would be fantastic. But I don't know how awesome it would have been necessarily in the first bit anyways, because we weren't having enough sun to, really keep one powered. So generators aren't always the fix. Sure, that's great if you have like a whole home one and you can afford all of that. Like, sure, I'm sure there's many great ways, but being able to have adapters and chargers in your vehicle that you could at least get that on and could at least maintain stuff in that way, it really was like a whole day rotation. In the morning, I would come out, I would start the car. We had a basket for charged things, a basket for things that needed to be charged. And it was a constant rotation of me putting the things through, turning the car off for the while, putting the car back on, charging more things, and kind of going through that. But being able to have those adapters and chargers in the car ready to go, ready to be used is definitely a game changer when you're dealing with a emergency, off-grid situation. My next tip would really be to be intentional with tidiness. Again, like the first point of water. When you don't have regular availability to clean stuff up, you're going for this extended period of being off grid and everything being down. You can't wash clothing. You can't just go run the dishwasher. You can't get in the shower, right? When all of a sudden you can't do these things, it is amazing how quickly you start to notice stuff really building up and really getting gross. It happens. And again, we have 14 of us here. So that was a lot of us to try to keep through it all. But it was something that we really had to get intentional with. Keeping dirty clothes from clean clothes and what can be just hung up, what is, totally destroyed, trying to keep up with dishes, the process we had to go through to collect water from the creek, to boil water over a flame that we were tending 24 hours a day, to be able to put it in a bucket and be able to try to wash things. It just takes so much more and it's such a longer process that if you can really from the get-go stay intentional and tidy, it really does have a big impact. Now, it feels kind of silly when you're in the middle of this like chaotic disaster scenario to be going around and tidying stuff up. But if we would have been able to catch it at the beginning, it would have made a really big difference in the overwhelm that just continued to grow every single day as the power never came back, the water never came on, the phones never started working, right? The longer that went on, the more difficult that piece really, really was. So I highly recommend be intentional, stay on top of it, keep it tidy from the beginning to the best of your ability. My next tip is especially important for those of us with kids. Now, we have kids here. We've got 9 kids from a 6-year-old up to our adult children who are like just turning 20 years old. So there's a lot of kids. We kind of got a little bit of everyone here. And being able to get everyone involved in the things that have to happen, all of a sudden, literally in the blink of an eye, we all woke up and our lives have been radically changed, right? Everything's destroyed. Everything's falling apart. Trees are down everywhere. You know, sheep are almost hit by a tree. Fencing has to be redone. Fires have to be kept, going because we're having to boil water and find ways to cook food and to gather supplies and to take the resources we have on the land and find a way to utilize them to do all the things we need to do, right? Just absolute chaos is going on. Being able to set the tone with good morale and just positive team effort was so important. We've really sat back, even in the past couple of weeks, power has come back on, things kind of go back and forth, but we're having to deal with all of the recovery and the cleaning and the mold removal and just all of the stuff, and you're trying to pitch in the community and tend to your stuff and do all of these things. But we kind of chuckled because we said, man, that week of no power, while it was very difficult in many ways, it was so wonderful in some ways because everybody had something to do and we involved everybody in it. From the 6-year-old, up to the dads, everybody had something that they could do in a way that they could pitch in and get involved. And that really did make the days go so much differently, because everybody had their piece to play. Everybody had their strengths that they could focus on. It was joint efforts and doing things together. And so getting everyone involved, kind of setting the tone and keeping that morale up, while everybody has their piece that they can pitch into whatever situation might be at hand, whether it's collecting twigs, sweeping up leaves, gathering water from the creek, whatever it might have been, being able to work on that all together and let everybody have their piece in it really did make a big, big impact to the root of it all. Because yes, there's the practicality in the things, but that inner piece, that morale piece, the way that we're all feeling and processing everything going on around us, this was important. The 11th tip is very important, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because I struggle with this as well. Rest when you can. At the beginning, it was so chaotic when it looked like nothing was coming back and it only kept getting worse, and you're trying to deal with all the things, and we're starting to get little teeny tiny bits of connectivity, and we're seeing just how widespread this is and how huge it is and all of the pieces that are going on. We're still seeing this with all of our neighbors here today. It wears you down so much. Rest was hard to come by when all of a sudden the power's out. It's getting hot. It was hot and muggy, and the ground was so wet that the humidity was just insane. You have no fans, no air conditioning, right? You're not eating normal ways, right? All of these things are going on and are crazy. Being able to find bits and have these times, we've taken a few days since then where we've just rested all day, even though there's so much more work to do and it's never ending, it seems right now. You get so worn down and you can only do so much. So remembering to take care of your health and to rest when your body needs it is a wonderful thing to do from the get-go. You can only do what you can do. And sometimes you need that rest. You need that time to just heal and recover a little bit before you can continue on. And last but not least, my final tip of things in the first 24 hours after a disaster that I wish we knew, and I want to make sure we hold on to for, Lord willing, any other situation we might run into. And that is to savor even the small moments of lovely, even the tiny little bits. For me, it was things like waking up and getting the fire, re-going, and making some coffee in just a French press, and sitting down by the fire and having a cup of coffee. I knew I'd have a big day ahead of me. I was waking up earlier, we weren't sleeping great. There's all the negative bits of it, but having a cup of coffee by the fire in the early hours of the morning is absolutely beautiful. Being okay with things not being okay was another one. Coming to that piece of, I know it's not all okay right now, but that's okay. It is what it is. This is what is on my plate. This is what the Lord has put before my path. And that's okay, because there's always a lesson and blessing through it all. And so that was something that, just grasping that concept and holding on to it, really cleaving to that through the process, was really important. Watching the kids, play board games and have fun while they were working and collecting sticks or water, or tending the fire. The kids loved playing hangman the whole time, and they had a wonderful time with it. Those were little bits of lovely that I could just savor and soak up. And then just that time of gathering in the evening by candlelight. The house looks all cozy. We're all exhausted. We've been working so hard all day. We don't know how many more days of this we have going on still, but there is this bit of loveliness to it. To pause and to savor that when the world is quite literally just melted away around you, and what you have is what's right here in front of you. There's no outside noise of anything that can come in, because everything's been cut off. We could be fearful in that, or we can cling on to the bit of loveliness that is just being there and present and engaged, and savoring those moments of what you do have in front of you. It is lovely. So friends, those were some of those things that I wish we would have had all of that down in the first 24 hours of the grid literally going under, everything coming apart, and just chaos ensuing after a natural disaster. We never know what tomorrow might bring. And so for all of us, whether you're here and you're a local neighbor and hello, I hope you're doing okay, or you're somewhere else, we never know what's going to happen next. And so to have some of these things and be a little more prepared, and prepared in a way, yes, in the practicality, but also in the deeper root of it, I think is really, really important. So many of you, again, you've been asking how you can help, and we will continue to share that. Check out all those links down in the description. Share this video, subscribe, turn on your bell notifications, join us for the other things as well. It really does make all the difference. And if you guys want to see the specific things that we had or have gotten that are helping us to be more prepared and to really make a difference here for those of us going through all of this, be sure you watch this video right up here, where I share my favorite things that have really been game changers in this area. I'll see you on the next one. Bye, friends.